Is this mysterious artifact that was discovered in a lost Mayan city evidence of a forgotten civilization? This is the question I am going to attempt to answer in this episode. I am super excited to go down this rabbit trail with you. But first, really quick, before we do, just a reminder, please subscribe to my show from wherever you watch or listen, whether that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. And while you're at it, if you can, especially on Spotify, please give me a 5-star rating. That really helps me to break through the algorithms, climb the charts, and in turn reach more people to our real true history. And also consider joining me on one of my upcoming tours. We've got our Secrets of Cambodia tour coming up November 5th through the 11th. And through the end of this month of August, you can lock in the super early bird price of $14.99. And my fellow researcher and explorer friend, Cassie Coppersmith, who's been on this podcast many times, is now going to join me as a co-host. It's going to be incredible. Think about joining us. And coming up in March of 2026, we have our Israel Petra tour. This is going to be off the charts, amazing. And through the end of August, you can lock in the early bird price of $2,999. And last but not least, coming in May of 2026, we have our annual Peru and/or Easter Island tours. And through the end of this month of August, you can get $801 off our Peru tour and $601 off our Easter Island tour, keeping the prices under $3,000. You will not find better prices to get to Peru or Easter Island than these tours. So for all these deals, to lock it in, go to megalithic.marvels.com/tours for more information. So let's jump into some incredible Mayan history. So long ago, a very mysterious artifact that not many, I believe, know about was discovered in what's considered a lost Mayan city, and I'll explain that in a little bit. And my big question is this artifact evidence of a forgotten civilization that once ruled and reigned in what we now called Mexico? So first, let's talk about a potential cover-up here. And shout out to my friend and Mayanist and host of the Earth Ancients podcast, Cliff Dunning, for first posting a photo of this artifact I'm going to talk about and asking this initial question here that I'm asking, which is, why for over a century has mainstream archaeology spoon-fed us a history concerning the Maya that has not included the oral traditions of the living descendants of this very ancient civilization? Because to this very day, these living Mayan descendants practice the very sacred sciences that were passed down to them by their ancestors. Yet their sacred knowledge and the mysterious legends they possess do not seem to be included in mainstream Mayan history. Therefore, the result of this misguided approach by the mainstream history gatekeepers seems to have darkened our true understanding of this amazing Mayan culture and civilization. Because it seems that there are very few on Earth that seem to understand that there was an earlier epoch or earlier period of pre-Maya civilization that some guesstimate goes back as far as 6000 BC, where a lost civilization, sometimes referred to as the first people, ruled in this area that we now call Mexico. So it's beginning to appear that what we call the classic Maya, which dates from 250 to about 900 AD, actually inherited much of their knowledge from this earlier pre-Maya culture who possessed sacred knowledge and what I believe are lost ancient technologies. So now let's get into the discovery. In the dusty royal archives of a museum library in Madrid, Spain, there is an obscure 16th century account written by a Spanish monk named Antonio de Real, who made note of an abandoned and ruined city located somewhere in northwestern Yucatán. Now, the monk described seeing large ruins covered in dense jungle, and he paid specific attention to a mysterious labyrinth a maze made of literal stone that he had found amongst the ruins. Now, with the interpretation of locals who were guiding him throughout the area, the monk wrote this about this incredible maze-like structure. Quote, "This was the place where they tossed those who had committed great offenses so that they may die." End quote. Now, this mysterious site somewhere in Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula would receive very little attention for nearly 3 more centuries until the arrival of the famous explorer duo of Stevens and Catherwood in 1842. They explored the site, made some sketches, they did excavations, and Stevens and Catherwood also made note of this mysterious maze, stone-like structure that was still standing in this unnamed place. Now, this little-known lost city finally received its formal name of Ashkinuk after archaeologists found this word inscribed on one of its monuments. Now, the name glyph comprised 3 parts: Ash, meaning 3, Kin, meaning day or sun, and Tuk, which has been interpreted to mean flint or hard stone. So, loosely translated, the ancient Mayan name for this place was Flint of the 3 Suns, or as some say, the city of the 3 cutting suns. Okay, now let's talk about this mesmerizing artifact. Now, this site of Ashkinuk is located approximately 60 miles south of Merida, which is the capital of Yucatan, Mexico. And if you go there and you visit today, you will find pyramids, you'll see temple-like structures, you'll see a ball court, a little bit similar to what we see at Chichen Itza. You'll see this infamous labyrinth, which has intrigued and mystified explorers since the site's discovery, which I should also mention has now been dubbed Satunset. But unfortunately, this labyrinth, of course, is closed to public access. Now, as amazing as these ruins at Ashkinuk are, the pyramids, the temple-like structures, this labyrinth, there's something else to me that is personally even more amazing. And it's this stela of a strange humanoid-looking figurine. Unfortunately, it's no longer at the site today. It's at a museum in Mexico, and I'll tell you more about that museum at the end of this episode. However, we do have an early 1900s black and white photograph of these ruins at Ashkinuk that shows a man, possibly a worker, maybe helping with the excavations, sitting in between these 2 partially excavated stela columns that feature these enigmatic figurines protruding from them. And if you're watching this by way of video on YouTube or Spotify, you're going to see this photo now. And I want to point your focus to the stela on the left side. Now, despite the ages of what I believe is severe weathering that hit this limestone masterpiece, we can still make out much of its stunning and strange details today. Now, first take notice of his squared helmet-like head and these large protruding eyes. Now, is it just me, or is he wearing some sort of goggles or protective eyewear? What is going on with this head and these eyes? Very strange indeed. Now, as we gaze below his large ears, we see his wide nose and a kind of a wide mouth. We see that he is wearing something around his neck that culminates in what could almost be considered a pendant or even a badge, possibly. And now take a step back and consider, what is this outfit that he is wearing exactly? Is this some type of armor, or is this some kind of protective suit? Because from his shoulders all the way down to his ankles, you can see that this outfit features these horizontal strips or even layers that appear to overlap with each other, especially on the shoulders there, especially that right shoulder. And very importantly here, you can see how his stomach appears to bulge outward and is covered by this circular-like object underneath which is this belt or some kind of support strap that runs behind him and connects to the pillar. So I want to know, what is this circular object? Now, I know people in the mainstream camp will probably say, oh, it's just a nice ritualistic decoration that he used while he was worshiping and enjoying his incense, right? But what if it was actually depicting something else? What if this was depicting a weapon of sorts? What if this is some kind of communication device? What if this was some kind of ancient holistic energy healing device? I guess my mind is going there because my wife has had me using this special red light therapy thing she bought on Amazon that looks kind of like this. And if you read into the science and technology of it, it's regenerating your cells and it's supposed to be healing your body. At least that's what they say. I mean, we could sit here and talk about the circle for quite a while. I have so many ideas. I mean, was this some kind of pulse weapon? Did it release some kind of invisible energy beam, again, for good or for bad? I don't know, but very, very intriguing. Now notice that his right arm bends down, which leads to his hand that appears to be grabbing what looks like a controller that is connected to some kind of star-shaped object. So that leads me to think, might this controller have activated this circle on his belly, this piece of technology possibly? As you can see from other photos we have of this artifact, modern day photos of him in the museum, you can see a section of his arm is missing, but clearly the wrist and the clenched hand are very visible. As Mayanist Cliff Dunning points out, although there's many areas and portions of this figure that have been damaged, this artifact stands out as uniquely strange, with no other real examples like it. We also have no references regarding this ancient piece of mysterious art, which leads one to consider, who is this supposed to depict exactly, and what historical period is it from, or was it meant to represent? Could we be looking at a figure wearing a strange protective helmet, or a soldier charged with handling combustible liquids or even explosives? Now, unfortunately, these kind of questions are considered forbidden in the context of today's historical and archaeological narratives, which really appear to be struggling with the growing evidence that ancient Mesoamerican culture had a technological past. Now, in studying this site, archaeologists do admit that the architecture at Ashkinuk presents a fascinating, quote, amalgamation of early, late, and terminal classic Maya styles, and includes influences from outside the Maya area, end quote. Very interesting that they have come to that conclusion. Additionally, the site exhibits architecture commonly associated with Central and Mexican sites like Teotihuacan and Monte Alban, indicating diverse architectural influences across different regions and time periods. So that's important to point out. Now, according to mainstream archaeology, the city's height lasted between 250 AD up until the late 1400s. So by the time the Spanish monk Antonio de Real arrived at Ashkinuk in the 1500s, the city had been completely void of people for nearly 100 years and was thoroughly overtaken by the jungle. But like so many other Mayan sites, only a small fraction of the city has been excavated today, giving us only a glimpse into Ashkinuk's real former glory. Now, strangely, there are no records of tribute paid to or received from other Mayan kingdoms to Ashkinuk. There is also a lack of evidence of violence, with the absence of fortifications at Ashkinuk. which has led some archaeologists to believe that the people of this city really enjoyed a relatively peaceful existence. So, the million-dollar question is, are the foundations of this city from a forgotten earlier period in Earth's history? Did the classic Maya resettle in this area, just a couple thousand years ago, and then build their structures on top of it and around these forgotten foundations? Was this strange humanoid stela made by the first people long before the Maya? Or possibly was it even made by the early pre-classic Maya to depict the knowledge they had of their ancient ancestors from what we would call a lost civilization from time immemorial, who once ruled in what we now call Yucatán, Mexico? And as I mentioned earlier, of the two stela columned figurines that we see in the old 1900s photo, the one on the right side is today known as column 2, and it's been moved to the Anthropological Museum in Mexico City, where it can be seen. And the statue on the left side, which has been the focus of this video, can be viewed today at the Natural History Museum in Merida. And I should say how difficult it is and was to find photographs of this stela, of this columned anthropomorphic statue. You would think something so incredible would be so easy to find, but man, it really wasn't. And again, shout out to Cliff Dunning for the photos he took featured in this video from his visit to the museum. And thankfully, we have the old vintage black and white photo to use as reference. Link below in the show notes. I've got my sources for this episode if you're interested in learning more. And thanks again for watching. And until next time, keep exploring.